Hi, this is Bob Zase again. We did a live video for the first lecture, and now this is the last lecture, and going to use a combination of slides and live camera. This is the last lecture of the course. There are 3 weeks remaining in the course. During those last 3 weeks, we will focus on your individual plans. Reading, you'll be submitting the plans, I'll be reading them, giving you feedback, and that's a very important part of this course. And please make sure you get your business plans in on time. I will come back to that at the end. However, for this last lecture, we are going to look at what is called either an exit plan or a harvest plan. Different textbooks use different terms. Basically, an exit plan is the term that a lot of people use for a failed business, such as you have to shut it down or bankruptcy. When we're talking about a successful business, we like to use the word harvest, gathering the fruits of all your labor and energy and money and risk-taking. So we're going to look at both of these. You do need an exit plan or a harvest plan. I'll use the terms interchangeably, so don't get upset about that. If the business fails, if you are a sole proprietor or a partnership, and go back to the modules on legal structure, if you are not, don't remember what those two structures are, but again, if you're a sole proprietor or a partnership, you can literally just close the door, lock it up, and perhaps walk away. If you're a corporation or an LLC, it's a little bit more complicated, and of course there is always a dirty word called bankruptcy, and we're going to take a look at that. If it's successful, then you have a lot more options, and we'll again look at each of these individually in this lecture. The exit plan or harvest plan is not part of the outline for your business plan for this course. The reason for that is it's the very last lecture that we're doing right now, and you really wouldn't have time. At this point in time, your business plan should be pretty much finished, and rather than try to get it in at the last minute, I eliminated that from the requirements for the plan for this course. However, if indeed you are going to use the plan or write another plan for a business and actually try to go into business, you should have an exit/harvest plan. I would suggest that you really look at both aspects. One, what's the downside if the business is not successful? You know, how much can you recoup? How do you put an end to the money that's being spent? And get out of it. On the other side, if the business is successful, and hopefully it is, you want to take a look at what do you do when you want to get out? When you want to retire, when you want to go start a different business, when you just want to go take it easy, or maybe do some social work, or maybe go into politics or something like that, government service. As an aside, there are, I know, a number of people, particularly in the state of Delaware. It seems that the chief executives for the state and major counties in Delaware all are ex-corporate executives. And, they've made their money, they had their career, and have decided to go into public service, into government, either because they want to do good things or to further build on their egos, perhaps. But again, they left perhaps a successful business, one executive in the state government in Delaware. He and his family owned a small but very successful drugstore chain in Delaware and Maryland, and which was sold to Walgreens a few years ago, and he went into politics. Didn't have to worry too much about making a living. All right, we're going to look at each of these options on the screen and talk about them. Exit plan, if the business is not successful. As I said, if it's a sole proprietor or a partnership, you can frequently just close the doors and walk away from it. There are very few formalities. However, if you look at the bottom of the slide, you will see that you're not going to walk away clean. You may be liable for, and probably will be liable, on any personal guarantees that you made to the phone company, the utility company, the landlord, if you're renting space. Taxes, you will not get away with. In fact, in order to shut the business down, you will probably have to get an approval from the tax people, at least in the state of New Jersey, that all state New Jersey taxes have been paid. If you're a corporation or a limited liability company, again, go back to the structures piece, legal structures. If you're a corporation or an LLC, you have to take a step called dissolving the corporation or LLC. It's filing a series of forms with the state, and again, I'll assume New Jersey for the moment, but whatever state you're incorporated or set up in, you would file with that state saying you're shut down, and what has happened to the assets, and also, again, a form from the tax authorities saying that all of the payroll taxes and those kinds of taxes have been paid so that you can get away. We will talk about bankruptcy in a little more detail in a few moments. But again, the idea of shutting down the business or indeed bankruptcy works, but the problem is, again, these lingering personal guarantees, the taxes, putting the company into bankruptcy is not necessarily the solution. And it does require some professional help, some professional advice. Bankruptcy is a federal, United States federal act. It is governed by the federal courts. The bankruptcy courts in New Jersey are in Trenton and Newark, and there's one down in Camden. You apply, again, to the U.S. Bankruptcy Court in order to avail yourself of that protection. Chapter 11, which we'll talk about in a second, is a reorganization. And you've probably heard that a lot on the news about larger companies. Many of the airlines have been in and out of bankruptcy several times through Chapter 11. And it is a reorganization, and again, we'll talk about that in a second. Chapter 13, and these numbers correspond to the particular chapters of this Bankruptcy Act or Bankruptcy Code, as it's called. Chapter 13 of the Bankruptcy Code is a time payment plan for a sole proprietor or an individual. And the idea is that what you would do as a person, either a sole proprietor of a business or a partnership, a member of the partnership, or a personal bankruptcy, is you would sit down with a bankruptcy specialist, lawyer or paralegal, or an accountant, perhaps, and work out a payment plan where you would pay off the majority of your debts over an extended period of time. And frequently, interest would be stopped, so you're not continuing to accrue interest on these debts. You may not pay off the entire debt. You may pay off 50 cents on the dollar, 60 cents on the dollar, something like that. But it is a way to recover, and it is analogous to the Chapter 11 bankruptcy for corporations or LLCs. Chapter 7, on the other hand, works both for corporations / LLCs and for individuals. It is a liquidation. The difference is this. With Chapter 11 for the company or Chapter 13 for yourself, you're paying things off and you get to keep those things. And perhaps, again, you don't pay 100 cents on the dollar, you only pay a portion, but everybody agrees that that's okay. With the Chapter 7, it's a different story. It's a liquidation. If it's a company, the company shuts down, a bankruptcy trustee is appointed by the court. That trustee comes in and gathers up all the assets, the computers, the projectors, the furniture, the equipment, the light fixtures if you own them, and auctions them off at public auction. The money that comes from the auction of those assets is used to pay the creditors. They parse out the money, 10 cents on the dollar, 20 cents on the dollar, but pro rata to all of the creditors so that every creditor that has an equal standing anyway gets their piece. Now, it's a complicated process, and there are differences between debts that are secured by collateral, if you remember that word from a prior lecture, or security. If that creditor has, say, the car or the truck as collateral, as security to back up their loan, they got first rights to that truck. But assuming that these are unsecured creditors, unsecured debt, everybody would get an equal share. With an individual Chapter 7, you're not allowed to keep much. There's a list and it changes every year, goes up a little bit in dollar amount, but essentially you can keep a car that's not too expensive, pretty much a junker. You can keep a certain amount of cash. You can keep tools of your trade so that you can work for a living. Keep a certain amount for funeral, prepaid funeral, a variety, but it's not a whole heck of a lot. You would have to sell pretty much everything. So for individuals, Chapter 7 works if you, for example, don't own a home, because you would have to get rid of the home, the house. If you own a house and you want to keep it, but you want to file bankruptcy, you would look to Chapter 13, which would allow you to continue to pay the mortgage and pay some of the other bills and hang on to these assets rather than having an auctioneer sell them. Well, most companies will be looking probably to be either a corporation or an LLC, particularly once they get off the ground and get moving. For the reasons that I discussed in prior lectures, that's a good structure and it gives you a lot of flexibility for raising capital and money for expansion. So chances are, if there is trouble, you would be looking at a Chapter 11 or reorganization. And in this situation, as I said, the airlines and big corporations come in and out of bankruptcy frequently. And you can do it more than once. The problem is, as a practical matter, that you, as the owner of the business, chief stockholder, chief CEO, you owe money to quite a few people. Each person, each creditor says, I want my money and I want it now. I don't care about these other guys that you owe money to. I'm concerned about me and I want mine now. And every single creditor says that. And you're in a position of saying, wait a minute, which one do I pay? I can't pay everybody, and everybody says, me, me, me. So what you do is you prepare a plan to pay off part of it, possibly give some of the creditors a piece of the company. In other words, give them some shares of stock, a certain percentage of the company, instead of the debt. That's a way to pay off the debt. Are they willing to take it? If they think you have a chance of recovery and being successful, they might view that as a good investment. On the other hand, if they think you're going to continue to go burn away, they may say, thanks, but why would I want your stock? It's not going to be worth anything. And again, there are ways of setting it up so that there's no interest, that certain penalties that might apply on things like mortgages or taxes, could be waived. There's a lot of flexibility. And again, you would have to talk to a bankruptcy specialist to work those angles. It's not an easy process, but it can be done. What you do then is you take that plan to the bankruptcy court, and a federal judge, after reading it, will hopefully approve it and say, yes, this is good. This is a good way to handle this problem. And I do not necessarily agree with the last bullet here on this slide. I don't agree with the word agree. The creditors and the owners don't necessarily agree, particularly the creditors. What happens is it gets rammed down their throats by the bankruptcy judge. All right? They don't have a choice. They may not like it, but they're forced to take it. And it's better than nothing. So everybody gets a little piece of the action. Everybody gets some of their money back. Not everything they wanted, not everything they expected, but they still serve. And you continue to survive. That's the important part, is your company continues to run, continues to function, and hopefully get better. Okay, enough of the negative side. Let's talk about getting out of the successful business or the harvest plan scenario. The textbook and a lot of experts point out that family-run businesses frequently don't make the transition from the founders to the next generation, to their kids. Why? Well, perhaps the kids don't like the business that Dad was in, and we've all seen movies and TV series and stuff like that show these kinds of scenarios. The business was a jealous mistress to Dad. Dad never had time for me. Dad didn't come to my baseball games, soccer games, whatever, because he was always working. He was always traveling. You learn to hate the business just because one or more parents were so involved in the business that you kind of got the short end of the stick on attention. However, that's not always the case. Some children want to go into the business that their parents are running. They become active in it early in their life and stay there. Successful businesses that are family run, Smuckers, jams and jellies, past the Smuckers. Family-run business, has been for generations. M&M's, our friendly little round M&M. Until recently, they were a family-run business. They've since sold out and moved on, but have for many generations been a family-run business. S.C. Johnson Company. I talked about them in prior lectures in the branding session, where most of their product names are better known than S.C. Johnson. But in the last several years, you've seen ads on television saying, for instance, Windex, a product of S.C. Johnson, a family company, pushing the family company image, pushing the corporation image to build on the success of their product names. All very successful companies that have transitioned from generation to generation. Another possibility is that sometimes you skip a generation. And an example is Lionel Trains. If you have kids, or if you were a kid, particularly a male, you may have had a set of Lionel Trains when you were a kid, or you may have them now. Great trains through the 1940s, 1950s, into the early 60s. Lionel was just wonderful. Well, old man Lionel passed on, left it to his kids here in Hillside, New Jersey. They didn't like the business. They sold it to Quaker Oats, who was just looking for an investment. They knew nothing about trains. They were looking for an investment. It later became part of Pillsbury. And through the 60s and 70s and 80s, it just went down the tubes. Poor quality, poor marketing, they were just letting the company die. Terrible, terrible products, terrible quality, not a good scene at all. The grandchildren of old man Lionel came back and bought the company back and put it back in Hillside, New Jersey, and brought it back with a vengeance. Resurrected a lot of the stuff that was built in the 50s and classic type stuff, and are now selling it as collectibles or things for train enthusiasts. Superb quality, superb workmanship, doing a good job of marketing. Didn't make the transition from first generation to second, but it skipped one and came back. There's always an exception to the rule. Well, if you don't have or you can't find a family member to look at the business, to take over the business, then your harvest plan could involve a number of things. You can go out and hire some managers, and you can sit back and read the newspaper, watch the stock go up and down. The problem with hiring managers is you have to trust them. If you're not going to get in there and be an active part of the business, you have to have absolute faith that these managers are going to do a good job and have your best interest at heart. And I know a number of personal stories. I know a number of articles that have been written where people made mistakes. They brought in a manager and they said, oh man, this person is going to do such a great job, and that person just bled the company to death. Sometimes unintentionally, sometimes maliciously. And sometimes you can catch the person and send them to jail, but if they've already squandered all the money that they've stolen from you, there may not be a whole lot that you can do about it. So be careful. Of course, you can sell it, particularly if it's a corporation or an LLC. You can even a sole proprietorship. You can sell the business if somebody wants to buy it. Unfortunately, sometimes finding a buyer isn't that easy. Camera shop that I dealt with for many, many years, a husband and wife store in Denville, New Jersey. Couldn't find a buyer when he wanted to retire. Wound up just shutting down the business. I think he owns the property and he rented to somebody else, totally different business. They make smoothies or something like that. But again, selling a camera business, nobody was really interested, particularly in the days of Walmart and Target and that, who are undercutting you in price. What value do you as a camera store bring in? So again, selling it is a possibility, but it's not a surefire. You can go public. The lecture we just finished, the prior lecture, talked about going public. You can do that, and you can become a stockholder. And if you own enough shares of the stock, be on the board of directors, kind of keep oversight over it. That works. Again, not necessarily the solution, but a solution. You can merge with another company, and here we're back in the scenario of, are you being bought by somebody? Is somebody acquiring your company? Or are you merging? And it's usually in the eyes of the beholder. Chances are you'll be selling your company to somebody else. Like I mentioned, this executive from Delaware who sold his small chain of drugstores to Walgreens. Okay. Merged. Yeah, merged. Right. They all have the Walgreens name now, so that was an acquisition. And you can always have a management buyout. Again, in terms of acquisitions and mergers back in that lecture, I talked about employee buyouts such as Avis, where you sell the company to the employees and let them become the owners and stockholders, and you just leave. And don't forget, one of the things that, again, we've talked about this before, but one of the things that you should have is a buy-sell agreement if you are more than a one-person company, because you want to control who your business partners are, who owns the stock of your company, provided that you're not a publicly owned company, because then the public is your partner and you have no control over who is an owner of your business. And you put this in your partnership agreement, your corporation bylaws, or your LLC operating agreement. And again, we talked about that in earlier lectures. And typically what it says, if you remember, is that you and I are partners, and if I die, the company has the option, first refusal, right of first refusal, option, to buy back the stock from my estate, from my widow, from my next of kin, at its then current fair market value. And of course, you go off and value the get the company valued by an accountant. And you come up with a number, and the company pays that money to my estate or to my next of kin and gets the stock back so that they can control who it goes to. And you pay for this with insurance. The company gets insurance on the key owners of the company, which in effect is a nice tax-deductible business expense because you're giving that person, in essence, $1 million or $2 million or more of life insurance paid for by the company with pre-tax dollars, so that when that person dies, the stock goes back to the company, and the widow, the kids, get cash, which is what they want in the first place. All right. We figured out how to get out of the business if it's bad, how to get out of the business if it's successful. The key question is, where do you want to go? I said way back in the beginning of this course, don't start unless you know where you want to get to. As the Cheshire Cat said to Alice, or asked Alice, where do you want to go? And she said, I don't know. And the Cheshire Cat answered, then it doesn't matter which road you take. If you don't know where you want to go, you can take any path, but it may not lead you to where you'd like to be. Figure out where you and your company want to be a year from now, 3 years from now, 10 years from now. What are your goals? Do you want to be the next Bill Gates? Making lots and lots of money and then going off and hopefully doing good things with it, philanthropic things with it? Do you want to get your business going, successful, and then bail out and cruise your yacht around the Bahamas? That's great too. Or are you really happy running a small family business? You know, you don't want to grow the business. You want to be a lifestyle business. Remember that term from the beginning of the course? A lifestyle business, not necessarily going to grow a lot, one location, one restaurant, one consulting business, such as mine, you know, with no major plans of taking it significantly bigger. Do you want to sell it? Or some people look to run a business for a while, have some fun, make some money, and then shut it down because there may be a limited window of opportunity. You'll remember that term. I think I mentioned the video store. A friend of mine with a small video store. He knew it was a finite window. He knew Blockbuster was going to be there one of these days, and they came. I don't think he saw Netflix coming, but he saw Blockbuster. But he had fun while he was doing it. Now he's off doing something else. So again, what do you want to do? What are your priorities? Interested in power? Money? Do you want to manage a whole bunch of people? Some people have egos that they want to be the boss of a big organization. Okay. If not, don't do it. What priority does your family life take? How many hours are you willing to put into your business? What kind of priority do you put on your leisure time? Do you want to sit down and watch the football game every Sunday or even on Monday nights? If you're an entrepreneur and you're really hustling to get your business, you probably won't be able to. Not enough hours in the day. You have to figure out where you want to go. You've got to spend a lot of time, a lot of energy working. And if you start your own business, you're going to spend an awful lot of time, energy, stress, pressure. So make sure you really want to do it. If you're young, early in your career, you may have to take some really crummy jobs just to get ahead, to get experience, to make some money, make some sacrifices and do it. But once you really start what you want to do, make sure you do it or go do something else. Here's an example, and it was in the read for this week, the article out of Entrepreneur, I believe, or Inc., I forget which one. But it talks about Paul Eichen and a company called Rokenbach. All right, I have messed up. I apologize. Here we are. Here's the website. Rokenbach is a toy company. Now, if you read the article about Paul Eichen, And if you haven't, I suggest you do. But in essence, what it was he was a dot-com guy and started this company out on the West Coast, Silicon Valley, and part of in the dot-com high days, and burned himself out. Hated it. Too much pressure. It wasn't what he wanted to really do. So what did he do? He left and started something he always wanted to start. A toy company. He had this idea for what became Rokenbach, as it shows on the screen. Some interesting stuff. I call it Legos on steroids. Radio-controlled building stuff. You can make trucks that go up and down and all kinds of mechanized things with remote controls. And starter set runs around $250, $300, and you can easily spend $1,000 or $2,000 getting some neat stuff. My son bought it for his son, my grandson, for Christmas 2 years ago, and unfortunately my grandson's a little bit too young to really understand it, so Kevin, my son, really bought it for himself. But he and I have had a lot of fun with the Rokenbach toys. So the point is suddenly Paul Eichen is able to do or is doing something that he wants to do, something that he believes in. Now, the fact that he sold his dot-com company for $80 million in order to fund this new toy company startup doesn't hurt. So again, it helps to be successful. Even if you aren't in love with what you're doing, try to do your best and then take the profits and go someplace else. Being an entrepreneur should be exhilarating. It should be enjoyable. It's a lot of fun. It's a challenge. It's a lot of hard work, but it's very rewarding. So go ahead, pursue your dreams. Okay. That's the end of my lecture or sermon, as it may be. A couple of administrative things. Don't forget your business plan, the elevator speech or elevator pitch, which goes with it. This is, find way back in week 1. You should have seen this. That has to be presented, a series of PowerPoint slides. There are guidelines on Moodle as to a little bit more information on how to bring that in. The other thing is the business plan and the elevator pitch. This is the grading sheet. This is available on Moodle as well. It's an Excel spreadsheet. It is what I use to grade your business plan and the set of slides that you condense it down to as a presentation. All right. We will also be doing optional pitches, the online presentations. All right, again, there are details on the Moodle site about how we're going to do that in terms of schedule over the next 2 weeks and to earn some extra points. And I encourage you to participate, whether you give a presentation or just sit in and listen to somebody else's presentation and ask some questions, about their plan. Put them to the test and see how well thought out their business plan is. And again, don't forget that the business plans and elevator pitches are due, at least for this semester, at that date, and we will go from there. I thank you very, very much for participating in this course. I hope that I have been able to give you some ideas, reinforce some of the concepts that you already knew, and again, good luck on your business ventures, whether they be as a new startup company or whether it be as an innovator within a large corporation. Go for it. Go for it. Pursue what you want. Make your dreams come true. Thank you.